Okay, it's 10 past midday, so I'll start so that we have plenty of time for questions. This session also made a reference, I think, in the agenda to radios. I've dropped the radios, thinking that we could probably get enough content with just some roses and butterflies. So hopefully that's not too misleading for anybody. In particular, in this session, I'm going to look at two examples of how Amnesty International has integrated campaigning and fundraising. But before I go any further, I want to acknowledge my colleagues in Amnesty International UK and Amnesty International Australia, who were each responsible for these campaigns, and thank them very much for allowing me to share the findings with you. I also have a colleague from Amnesty International Switzerland in the room, and he'll point out where I'm factually incorrect and making numbers up and things. He's seen bits of this presentation before. So Kevin can be my truth person. All right. So just to make sure, in a sense, that we're all on the same page about integrating campaigning and fundraising, it has been a bit of a holy grail of NGOs over the past few years. Many of us have especially at Amnesty International, have big campaigning departments getting action-based asks out to an activist list. Many of us have big fundraising departments getting fundraising asks out to members and donors, and having very little conversation between the two of them. Yet we're pretty sure we're largely talking to the same group of people. Very possibly same people are on each list. Okay. Oh, there we go. So what would be the point of bringing these two departments together and actually trying to make them work more closely together? Well, for starters, there's got to be a benefit for our beneficiaries, those people on whose behalf we work. We think we can get more done if we're talking in a more integrated way, with more integrated asks to our larger base of supporters. We can make better, more cost-effective use of our resources, and we can get more impact, more, if you like, bang for buck. It's better for our supporters as well. We're pretty sure it makes them feel more involved. It's no longer an issue about what they do, but rather what we do together with them, the organisation and our supporters. We're pretty sure we know that people want to take part. They want to feel engaged, and they want to see how their work is impacting both their action work and their fundraising work. And it's got to be better for Amnesty International as well, and for your organisation too. We think this is a really good way of getting people to both stay with us and indeed to give us more support and more financial support. And we think it's a great way of re-engaging with lapsed donors and with new prospective donors. And for Amnesty International, it's really good for our brand. We are, at the end of the day, all about individuals taking action on behalf of other individuals. That's how we were founded. So this is what we think. This is our theory, that engaged supporters will stay longer, give more, and be more engaged with us over time. So we wanted to test this philosophy of engagement and see really how campaigning, activism, and fundraising can work together. So in the work that my colleagues in the UK and Australia did, we were testing how many people we can attract through better integrated asks, how cost effectively we can convert them to financial support compared to a straight fundraising ask, how we could more cost effectively achieve a campaign aim, and how we were contributing to the development of Amnesty International's brand as an activism and campaigning organisation. Now, there are a couple of different ways in which we conceived of integrating campaigning and fundraising. And both of these examples are very much under a planned campaign and fundraising integrated ask. But of course, you could also look at this in terms of a crisis or an emergency response way of working as well. And we might come to that a little bit later. So in terms of it being a planned campaign, we wanted to define goals and purpose, have a planning process, time schedule, budget, resources, and accountabilities, all those good things came together in each of these examples to try and get the learnings that we wanted from them. Oh, and I have muddled up my pages. Okay, so the first campaign that I wanted to talk to you about is called Justice for the Tiananmen Mothers. And this one is from Amnesty International UK. This campaign was focused on achieving justice for the Tiananmen mothers around the 19th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre. The aim was to build solidarity with the mothers of the victims of the Tiananmen Square crackdown, to ask the Chinese authorities to conduct open investigation and allow mothers to mourn, and to raise funds in Amnesty International UK to deliver increased campaign impact around this. And our hook for this was Chinese Mother's Day, which happened to coincide with the 19th anniversary of the crackdown demo. So with the aim of adding value to the existing campaign plans around justice for the Tiananmen mothers, it was also an experiment, a test, to see if we could communicate with the entire online supporter base with the same message, to get response and action. It was, in essence, a series of 5 emails, each focusing on specific single-minded asks and designed to engage people in the campaign by providing narrative and facilitating involvement in a way that would be meaningful. And this was something we hoped we'd be able to use for subsequent campaigns. So there were 4 aspects which were being tested: campaigning, engagement and fundraising, prioritising one single action, building energy and enthusiasm and motivation around the campaign, and sending all of the asks to everyone, so not just sending activist asks to activists or fundraising asks to supporters and members. The overall aim of the integrated approach was to maximise potential, to get more signatures, to mobilise more people, to get press coverage and to generate funding. And ideally to test whether we could do this in a more cost-effective and more successful way by fusing or integrating our objectives than trying to manage the project separately. So specific objectives for the Justice for Tiananmen Mothers. Increase the number of actions taken to be on the activist list. How many of our members and supporters could we get to take a campaigning action? Could we generate warm leads through forward to a friend? This was all email based, which we'll come on to in a moment. Could we find ways of reaching new audiences? How could we convert warm leads to cash giving and then convert those cash donors onto regular or monthly giving? Could we generate additional cash gifts from existing donors? And how could we reactivate lapsed activists and members through this campaign? So the plan. It's done in a series of emails sent to everyone for whom Amnesty UK had an email address that they could use. So again, not dividing people up into members and donors and activists, but to everyone. So here it is in 5 emails. Sending a Mother's Day message to mothers. In a second email, feeding back from the Tiananmen Square mothers and launching the petition and saying, we'll lay a rose in your name at the demonstration outside the Chinese embassy. And here's the fundraising ask. Can you pay for your rose and for Amnesty International to also put down some other roses? The third email was a reminder about the second email and the request there to forward to a friend, so looking for warm leads. Fourth email, asking people to attend the demo, which hopefully by now they were aware of and also had helped to fund. Email 5, a wrap-up. Look what we've done together. Look what Amnesty International has achieved. Here's your opportunity to join, to support Amnesty to do more like this. So hopefully you can see that reasonably well. This was the landing page for the first email that went out, and the message box giving people freedom to express their feelings of solidarity with the Tiananmen mothers. And in just 2 days, my colleagues had generated over 5,200 messages in that free text box. So, and this is the content that was used to feedback in the second email in the second chain. I don't know how many people are aware of the fact that there has been a long, ongoing campaign by mothers of the victims of the human rights of the massacre in Tiananmen Square, and they have had no voice either in China or really internationally to seek justice for what happened, or even an understanding and an accountability for what happened. So this is very much hooking into those emotions. This next email, email 2, was sent to all the same people as the first email and reported back to them on those over 5,000 messages that were received, with quotes from a few well-picked quotes from a few of those messages being sent out. And also those messages having gone to the Tiananmen Square Mothers Representative Group, an indication of the response that those mothers were making back to Amnesty about the content of those messages and how they felt to receive those messages and understand that people were also looking out for them and for their cause. In this email, we launched the petition to the Chinese government asking them to uphold the mothers' demands, which included the freedom to publicly mourn the death of their children and to call for a fair investigation of the military's actions. By way of adding impact at the demonstration later held in London, and to represent all those who had signed the petition, another rose was laid outside the Chinese embassy for each signature received on that petition. And in response to this email, Amnesty UK received over 9,000 signatures. So you can start to see what the fundraising target might be at that point, 9,000 times £5 a rose. But you can really get a sense of the appeal to emotion and the appeal to individual cases that is being made in this series of emails. Okay, some indication of the top line results. As I said, over 5,000 personal Mother's Day messages. People had actually taken the time to write in that free text box, which was well over what had been estimated. Over 13,000 petition signatures, and my colleagues tell me this is well over the industry average. Little over £13,500 donated, again over target, and we feel not too bad given it was quite a soft ask that was made. Almost 2,500 new online activists, which had come particularly from the Forward to Friends request. So that's generated 2,500 very good warm leads. And 264 new donors. Overall, we felt that given the Tiananmen Mothers campaign was not especially high on the public agenda at the time, that the figures we generated from this integrative way of working were really, really encouraging. So there is the possibility of turning this kind of integrated way of working into something that perhaps has more of a higher profile public hook to it. But we do think we found some really interesting figures and results in here. Some more detail there on the results. A little over 17% of the action takers new to Amnesty International, so reaching new audiences and getting them to join us in taking action. Almost half of people who did contribute to buying roses were not previous financial supporters. That's people really putting up their hands and saying, I'm interested in financially supporting Amnesty International. Some great, great leads. And contrary to what our colleagues in the campaigns department would have us believe sometimes, activists, people on activist lists who weren't already donors, actually gave much more than expected. And again, it's that integration. If our activists can see a direct link between their action and financial support, much more encouraged and much more inclined to give. Overall, in terms of the metrics for the campaign, it exceeded all of the targets that were set, other than for the conversion to membership, but not too bad going overall. And importantly, not just in terms of the metrics from the fundraising perspective, but also in terms of the outcomes which we wanted to be able to demonstrate to our campaigns and activism colleagues. We were able to make a much stronger national press pitch around the campaign. A certain amount of awareness around this issue had already been raised by this work. Clearly able to talk both to the group representing the Tiananmen mothers and their representatives in the UK and people working on their case in the UK, that Amnesty International and its membership are on board with their campaign and supportive. A significantly increased turnout for the demonstration outside the Chinese embassy. So a lot of that offline work converted into an enhanced, get this around the right way, a lot of the online work contributed to an enhanced offline presence at the demonstration. So a really good integration as well as offline and online campaigning and activism. We were able to achieve some overt support from the British government. The Foreign Office put out a statement saying that all political prisoners in China should be released in response to the work that we were doing to call for justice for the victims of the Tiananmen Square massacre. Our campaigns colleagues reported back to us that they had a significantly enhanced campaigning position with the Chinese officials at the government. We were obviously able to achieve additional funding and several thousand new donors and contacts. And finally, we secured a lot of learning around the integration of campaigning and fundraising, the processes that we needed to use internally, and the resources that were needed, but also what mass online mobilisation might do for Amnesty and how that might convert into offline. So what we think this demonstrates at this point in this campaign is that Amnesty supporters can be approached to offer voice, action, or money at key moments if we can make that case to them. So this can provide, this can complement, add value to existing work certainly for planned campaigns, and we suspect also for crisis situations. A second example I want to use, I have to this time credit my colleagues in Amnesty Australia for this one, uses a lot of the same ideas and principles, but on a slightly different campaign topic. Amnesty International's Comfort Women campaign was about calling for recognition of the human rights violations suffered by these women in World War II and for an apology from the Japanese government. Given Australia's location in the Asia Pacific, this one perhaps rings more immediately to Australian donors and activists than it would to people in the UK. And the way Amnesty Australia went about this was asking people to take action for Comfort Women by creating a butterfly online. And I've got a couple of screenshots in a moment of what that looked like. A butterfly being the symbol of the Comfort Women's campaign for justice and accountability. Once you'd created your butterfly online, an email went off to the Australian government asking them to put pressure on the Japanese government for an apology. And then trying to make the link with social networking sites, people were encouraged to post butterflies on Facebook and Twitter, again to try and reach out through those networks to new audiences, something which Amnesty is still really struggling to make work well. It was a particularly interactive and engaging campaign, had great creative execution, and we've subsequently adapted it within the Amnesty International movement for our campaign for sexual and reproductive rights for women in Nicaragua. So that's the landing page for the first email that was sent out to people, allowing action takers to choose the shape and colour of their butterfly. And you could actually be very clever with the way that it worked. You could colour it in online and create your own patterns. So the site collected mobile phone numbers and also told people why the section wanted to pick up their phone number. in order to be able to update on work. And we're also able to filter out the under 18s, which is a real challenge with these kinds of interactive tools, that you attract a lot of younger people by asking them to confirm they're over 18, so we could flag them. I'm over 18 years of age there. So those people weren't called as part of the conversion campaign or weren't followed up. The online action supported by offline action as well, trying to integrate on and offline, and taken out on the streets by Amnesty International's community campaigns team, which is a fantastic asset which that section has. So they're out on the street distributing petitions and asking people to colour in cards and send those off as appeals to the Australian government. And again, also collecting supporter details, although it's a little harder to see there, that's actually the response coupon on the back there as well. So what happened? Everyone who created the butterfly online was asked to donate $20 towards skywriting and drawing a butterfly in the skies above Parliament in Canberra. And all supporters were asked for contact details. So people with telephone numbers were asked for telephone numbers and asked for consent, so we could put them into a calling program. Amnesty Australia could put them into a calling program. So how did the results shape up? Well, almost 11,500 people created a butterfly online and took action on the Comfort Women campaign. Thousands more signed the butterfly card from the community campaigns team out on the street. And the online action got wide promotion through Twitter and Facebook, so it got outside Amnesty Australia's kind of standard supporter base. 25% of actions came from people who were not already supporters, a key campaign goal both for the fundraisers and for the campaigns department. And it's at that joint goal that we really find a lot of gold, a nugget of gold, in integrating campaigning and fundraising. And here's a picture of the butterfly being skywritten in the sky above Canberra when the lobbying of the Australian Parliament was done. So in terms of the fundraising targets, 285 action takers also made a donation. Again, some evidence for our campaigning colleagues that activists will give money if they see a very strong link between the money and their campaigning outcome. Very high average gift, and I would have to say that partly reflects, certainly at the time, I think this was last year, the Australian market. For Amnesty International, they have one of the highest value donor bases in our movement at the moment. They give very high average gifts, very high average first gifts, very high average monthly gifts as well. My colleagues there frequently would say to me, what global economic crisis for the first couple of years. That's partly because Australia was busy digging up its backyard and sending it off to China and earning an awful lot of money to do that. So there's a lot of money in the economy, I guess what I'm trying to say. So the butterfly was drawn with Comfort Women present outside the Australian Parliament, again reflecting that solidarity and strengthening of the campaigns and that link between what we're doing and what people are trying to achieve for themselves. And supporters were emailed the results of the campaign, including this image, to say this is what your donation has helped to achieve as part of the follow-up for the campaign. So that's, we're all fundraisers, right? So that's a table just showing some of the immediate results from the Amnesty Australia campaign. So that the groups were split into those who gave a donation to draw the butterfly in the sky and those who didn't or weren't asked, the people on the street, in effect. We saw a big uplift in donations for people who also gave to the butterfly. So people who gave to the butterfly and then were asked to give us another gift, there was quite an uplift in that. So for Amnesty International, both of these examples are pretty well known within our movement now. These have been very much about working out what is interesting and motivating and compelling to the people we want to engage with our cause, and finding a way to realise those things for them in a way that aligns with Amnesty International's mission and priorities. Clearly a very close connection with both the Tiananmen Mothers Campaign and the Korean Comfort Women Campaign. They're both very compelling causes, and it's very easy for us as individuals to relate to the position that both of those groups are in. And I don't think it's any coincidence that two, pretty successful campaigns are based on the impact on people's lives, on individuals, of human rights violations. So when we talk about chasing the energy at Amnesty International, we're talking about trying to chase the energy of that person-to-person connection and trying to deliver that to our supporters and our potential supporters in a way that will get them to engage with our cause. So that's where Amnesty International is at the moment with integrating campaigning and fundraising. And we have yet to really do this in a way that is connected to a more immediate campaign hook, or if you like, an emergency campaign. But this is something that we're trying to work on, particularly in relation to what is happening in the Middle East at the moment, trying to integrate both the campaigning and fundraising ask. And we see this very much as a way of reaching new audiences, driving the volume we need for lead generation to bring people closer to the organisation and convert them to becoming members and financial members and financial supporters. And as the marketplace for recruitment both becomes more expensive and more competitive, this is the way that we think we're going to have to work more and more. But it does mean we have to find those joint goals and objectives with our campaigns colleagues, many for whom fundraising is still a tricky concept to get their heads around. My colleagues in Amnesty UK had to do an awful lot of internal relationship building, trust building, to actually get access to the activist list and to be trusted to use the campaigner's activist list to do something. So it becomes almost as much of a sales job internally. Here's a really compelling campaigning and activism ask. We think we can get good results if you allow us to do it in this very staged, very process-driven, very metrics-driven kind of way. So I know that my colleague from Amnesty UK would strongly encourage you all, again, seize the opportunity, not wait for your campaigns colleagues to come knocking on your door, but to go to them and to go to them with good ideas and some evidence of some good results. So that's a couple of case examples from Amnesty International. I think I have left plenty of time for questions. Either of us, yes.
I would imagine that also like the donors from the activist list or those ones from the internet are also younger. Sorry. The donors that come out of the activist list and from the internet are also younger than the ones you usually talk to.
Yeah, that is very true. And Amnesty is, like a lot of organisations, has a very ageing donor base, and we need to start kind of feeding it at the other end. So it also has that advantage as well. That's a good point there.
Did you also do already like campaigns on like Facebook where you also afterwards convert to donations?
I don't know of any in Amnesty, but there may well be people testing that. I wouldn't necessarily know. I think we have multiple Facebook presences, not all of which are aligned with our campaigning and activism priorities. I don't know that we have yet been able to turn a Facebook engagement into a more sustainable engagement with the organisation. I think that's something we're still struggling with. But with kind of clever things like colouring in butterflies and promoting that on Facebook, we're trying to get people to engage with us. We have one or two other little things going on where we're trying to test Facebook and Twitter engagement and then trying to get people to stick, give us some more data, and then we can kind of take it from there. We're struggling with that little bit in the middle, the sticking bit.
But the ask was always like sent via email. Okay.
Yeah, and come to the demonstration. So that for people who were based in London on that occasion, and I don't know, but I imagine if you were based in Canberra, you might have had an invitation to attend the skywriting event as well. Yeah. Okay.
More questions? Are we done? Okay.
Oh, that was very quick. All right. Okay. Thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome.